All right. Well, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for getting together today and watching this. My name's Chris Nelson, and I'm one of the co-founders of Gaslight. We're a web and mobile development company in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'm also the creator of our apprenticeship program, and that is what I'm really excited to be able to talk to you all about today. So it's always good to start with a quote. That's what I was told, so I always like to have a quote at the beginning of my presentations. And this, of course, is from best-selling IT recruiting author Jane Austen from her seminal IT recruiting book, Pride and Prejudice. Okay, that's a joke. No live audience, so hopefully it worked. But I think you get the idea, and this has definitely been true for me. My entire career in software development, there's always been more companies that needed help finding software developers than there were software developers. It's something I really enjoy doing. The demand for it's always been really high. So, it's been a question on my mind for a long time. How do we make the field of software development more accessible? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think what's new, though, in probably the last 5 years, the word has really gotten out that software development's a great field to be in, that the demand is really strong. It's a good way to have a good living. The other thing that's happened is that there's been an explosion of material for people to learn the skills of software development. So there's been a lot of rise in intensive boot camp programs where you can go from zero to beginning software developer in 3 months of really intense work. There's also a ton of freely available material. Some of it's really, really high quality from some of the best institutions in the world out there to help you learn coding and software development skills. So you'd think all this would immediately translate to, okay, the problem is solved. There's people who have learned to code and we need to hire people who know how to code, so everything's great now. But what we've really found is this is not the case. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So basically, in a nutshell, what we realized was there's a ton of companies that need to hire developers. But what companies want to have typically, and you'll see this in the job positions out there, typically they're going to ask for like 2 to 3 years of experience. A lot of times they're going to ask for specific experience with specific programming language and technologies. And the reason for that is that companies want a certain comfort level that they can take their project and hand it off to someone and make sure it gets done. And that totally makes sense, but it doesn't quite match up with the situation that we have in terms of people out there that are ready to do the job of software developer. They just need a little bit of help to get there. And that's what we're about. And we started this apprenticeship program a couple years ago now after some experiences we had. I personally got to teach at a boot camp program in Chicago. I was really blown away with what these students were able to do for their final projects. Some of the final projects I saw were things that, as an experienced 20-year career software veteran, there were things that I was like, wow, I'd have to really think about how to do that. They were non-trivial applications that these students were building. But the hiring process for these students, I was really surprised that they weren't immediately snapped up. And so that's where I started to realize that there was this gap between people who had software development skills and employers that needed to hire them. And this is really all about how do we bridge that gap. And after talking to everybody that I could find that knew a lot about software development apprenticeships, this is the model that we came up with here. It is a 6-month defined length program. Our apprenticeship is 6 months long. And the way our apprenticeship works is we take an experienced developer who serves as their mentor. Initially that was me, and we've brought on some other mentors since then. But what we look for is somebody who can write code, is an effective developer, can contribute as part of a project, but also has an interest in and is excited about mentoring and helping the next generation of software developers learn. So we take that experienced developer mentor, we take pairs of apprentices, either 2 or 4, and that unit together joins a team at an organization that needs to hire developers. So they're joining a team that has real world stuff to get done. They're shipping real code to production, contributing as part of a team. And over that 6 months, that we found repeatedly is a good length of time for somebody to come in with a basic level of skill and grow into an effective, capable team member. So that's in a nutshell how it works, but there's some differences between this program and a lot of other apprenticeships out there, and I thought I'd call that out really briefly. One thing is our program is not designed to be an internship or a co-op where students come in for a length of time and then they go back to school somewhere else. This is more of a guided entry into the career of software developer. Ideally, the apprentices join a team with their mentor, and at the end of 6 months, those apprentices have grown into capable, valuable team members on that team, and they just keep going. At the end of 6 months, there's effectively no real change for those apprentices other than the job title changes, they get some more benefits and hopefully a pay increase, and they're full-time employees for you instead of being temporary employees as apprentices for Gaslight. The other thing that is different about our apprenticeship program, we realized early on that a lot of other apprenticeships are designed to grow developers for that company. So we could have, and we have in the past, done apprenticeships so that we can hire more developers at Gaslight. But what we realized is we couldn't really make a dent in the problem. The amount of developers needed by the industry is totally much greater than the amount that we wanted to grow Gaslight or could grow Gaslight. We absolutely can't hire all the people that want to become developers out there. And that wouldn't really make a dent in the problem for our partners that need to grow people as well. So this model being an apprenticeship as a service where we're partnering to grow developers for you and not us is one of the things that makes our model different. So where do we find apprentice candidates? And I kind of alluded to this a little bit already. There are kind of 2 main sources. And I started apprenticeship probably more with boot camp programs in mind. Some of them are really, really good, and there are great developers that come out of these programs. But what really, as the program has matured and we've had several apprentices go through and become successful, what we realized is you can absolutely become a very good developer, get a really high level of skill just by using freely available resources out there and going the self-taught route. I've seen many really good developers that have just started by using online materials, by showing up at user groups and talking to other developers there, and just kind of doing it themselves. And it's been really impressive, the people that I've seen take that approach, because frankly, I have a CS degree, that's my background, and the idea of just coming at it from nothing and teaching yourself, I'm really impressed with people who are able to do that. But in a lot of ways, the job of being a developer is about self-teaching. So people that have come in via the self-taught route, a lot of times kind of have a little bit of a leg up because they're used to having to learn the next thing themselves. They're not as expecting somebody to kind of, feed them the material as much. So it really can work really well. And it's a great source of potential development talent, because people that learn to code by using things on the internet, there's really no clear path for them to find an actual job doing it. It's very difficult for them. And there are people that I've brought on as apprentices that have been trying for literally years to break in. So it's a really large untapped set of people who can be effective developers. So let's talk about the assessment process a little bit, because I think this is absolutely one of the keys to why this thing can work. It's super important to find people that are going to be able to do this. It's a tremendously challenging thing to go from not knowing a lot of what's going on and becoming an effective team member over 6 months. It absolutely can be done, but it's super intense, and we want to help make sure that we bring apprentices on that are going to be able to do it and going to be able to do it successfully. And so some of the things that we've put together as we've learned how to do this, we still, of course, like to start with an initial interview and get to know the person. We like to give them a chance to get their questions answered and give them a feel for what they're going to be in for as they go through this. The other thing that we've added along the way is a math and logic challenge. And this is about 40 questions of mostly story problems, not really beyond the level of Algebra 1. It's not so much about the math per se, but what we find is that testing this kind of thing really correlates very well to how somebody's going to do at picking up abstract concepts and picking up the tremendous amount of material that they're going to have thrown at them over the course of 6 months. We actually borrowed this math and logic challenge with permission from another boot camp program that was using it to assess their candidates. And they tracked the performance of students on this test against the performance of students during the program, and they found a really good correlation. And we've seen this too, that it's just a good data point for how quickly somebody's likely to learn. The other thing, and this is really the most important thing that we do, to be honest, is we take the mentor, the experienced developer, and we have them code together with each candidate for a couple hours. And that gives us a chance to see firsthand, how do they write code, how do they think, how do they problem solve. And as an experienced developer, you can really see very quickly that, hey, this person is really going to be a good developer someday. They just need a chance. Really, in just an hour, you can kind of see that they have the qualities that are going to make them successful as a developer. So having that in-person or remotely, but having that one-to-one coding experience where we're seeing them code live is super important, and probably the most important factor in our selection process. So what does an apprentice actually do day to day, or what is kind of the week in the life of an apprentice? The main thing that they do is pair and work one-on-one with other team members. We do a lot of what's called pair programming at Gaslight, just as a way to develop software effectively. And we find that 2 developers working together on the code is more effective than 2 developers working by themselves. They just come up with better ideas and better code that way. And in the context of apprenticeship, it's a really great vehicle for learning. And typically it'll start with, an apprentice comes onto a brand new team, everything's new and unfamiliar. Their first pairing sessions are going to be a lot more of them watching and asking questions and learning. But what we find is as they start to see the same thing repeat, maybe the first feature that they see, they're mostly kind of observing, asking questions. The second feature they see, they're able to catch on a little bit more, maybe able to start writing a little bit of code. The third feature, they're starting to contribute more and more. And over the weeks and months, it's just sort of a natural progression that they go from noob with a lot of questions to more of an equal, and you're bouncing ideas back and forth with them the same way you would with any other developer. We also do book clubs where we're reading about coding with the apprentice. We're talking about what are the means that other people have used to become developers. We're doing coding exercises with the apprentices. We like to do that weekly, where in addition to coding on their project, we also set up kind of artificial coding exercises where this works especially well, when we have a large group of apprentices maybe on different teams or at different clients, it's really great to get them back together once a week for them to code together and see how the other apprentices are progressing and learn things that maybe they didn't have a chance to learn while they're doing the project work. We also get together weekly to do one-on-ones to check in with the apprentices to see how they're doing, make sure that there's nothing they need help with and things are going well. Every other month at least, we're getting the team that they're on together to kind of assess what their trajectory looks like. And what we look for is, hey, if we see the same progress from this apprentice over the next, say, 4 months that we've seen from the first 2, are they on track to be a team member and get hired as a developer? And then the main thing that apprentices do, of course, is that they continue to learn. There's going to be a lot of stuff where during the day things are going to come up that they don't know about yet. We ask them to kind of jot down in a notebook as they go what are some things that aren't familiar. And then they're digging in on their own as well and continuing to learn. We're providing them with resources for learning, and it's a very, as you might guess, very intense experience where they're learning all the time. So there's some things we've learned about apprentices and how it works that I thought were really interesting to share. And this is probably the biggest single learning that I've had through the program. And I kind of had an idea that this was true, but I wasn't aware how much it mattered until I actually had the experience of apprenticing people. And the way that I express this here is kind of in mathy terms, higher for slope, not y-intercept. But what it really means is if you think about where somebody starts in terms of the amount of knowledge that they have on day one, even if an apprentice starts with less specific knowledge about the technology or programming language that you're using on the first day, what really matters is over the course of 6 months, what their line looks like, how much they learn and how fast. So if you think about that red line person, maybe she came in on day 1 and there was a lot of stuff she didn't know, and then the blue line person came in and maybe he knew quite a bit more, but he just didn't progress as fast. Over 6 months, she's going to overtake him and in the end be the more effective developer. And I've absolutely seen this play out again and again to the point where I put a lot less emphasis, frankly, on what I would call static knowledge or memorized facts or that kind of thing. It's important to have facts and knowledge, but if you can learn and I can show you a concept and you can be applying it the next day and do that again and again and again, in 6 months you can absolutely become a really effective developer. One of the other things that I've learned is apprentices actually help make the whole team better, and this really surprised me initially. As an experienced developer, I've seen a lot, and it's happened to me a little bit. There's a thing that can happen to you, a lot of people call it burnout, where after a time, things just seem less exciting than they used to, frankly. And when an apprentice comes in is they give you a whole new perspective on things, and you get to see things through their eyes a little bit, and everything's new again. And it's just very reinvigorating to an experienced developer. It also is really a strong incentive to kind of up your game and make sure that you're showing these apprentices the best way possible to do things. And I think I've really seen apprentices have a very positive effect on the experienced developers on their team. Another thing we've learned is apprentices really work best in pairs. We tried initially with single apprentices, and that's really an overwhelming experience for them. They are only being able to compare themselves against the other senior developers, and they just feel really in over their head all the time. If they have a buddy who's about at their level, they have somebody to kind of gauge themselves against. They have somebody to encourage and support them. They learn from each other. There's really something magic that happens. So I do apprentices now in pairs. I don't have single apprentices join a team. It's just not as good. So most importantly, does this whole thing work? And I can say absolutely it does. We've been doing it for 2+ years now. We've had 10 people that have gone through the program and graduated to join the ranks as professional developers. Some of those early apprentices from 2 years ago now have been promoted and are continuing to do well at their organizations. We've had 10 people go through and we have 6 in progress. I would say we have at least an 80% success rate at this point. One of the quotes from our clients, I just wanted to show this. This is Dominic from Kroger. He's been a great partner in this program, as has Kroger. And they've hired another number of developers and brought them onto their teams there. So I kind of just wanted to close with this. Something that I think is, well, it continues to surprise me. At this point in time, and this is really pretty much always true, I assess apprentices on a rolling basis, so I pair with them and work with them when they're ready to go, and then I try to find them teams once I've assessed them and I know they're ready to be an apprentice. It is always the case that I have very good future developers that are waiting for a team to join. And I want you to think about that for a minute. You know, there's so many companies that say they want to hire developers. And I can say with absolute certainty, I have people that are going to be really good developers, and they're waiting. They're waiting to have a chance to do it. So with that said, I would love to open this up now for your questions and answer really anything I can. So get on the chat with those, I think, and we'll go ahead and do that if there are any questions out there already.
No questions so far.
Okay.
Put it in chat too.
Okay. Well, I'll hang for just a minute or two if there are any questions. The other thing that I would definitely like to put out there, my email is chris@gaslight.co. We'll make sure that is in the chat right now. If you watch this later on and want to hit me up with any questions, this is, as well as being a job, this is something that I just really care about very deeply. So if you want to talk apprenticeship, have any questions, want to know anything about how it works, or if I can help in any way, I will absolutely respond to those. I think this is just kind of a underused tool that we can use to kind of address the needs for more developers in our community.
So
Yep.
What kind of companies are most successful with apprenticeships? If you can repeat the question.
Sure. The question is, what kind of companies are most successful with apprenticeship? And that's a great question. I think if I look at our most effective partners, they have a few things in common, but really they were good environments for people to learn. They had expectations to deliver good working software, but those expectations, especially for the apprentices, were correct in terms of, yes, an apprentice is not going to deliver on day one at the same level of a 20-year veteran, but at the end of 6 months, they're absolutely going to be very capable, effective developers. So having the expectations and understanding that this apprentice has room to grow and learn. I also feel like environments where the culture is that people help each other across teams as well, where, hey, if you have a question, I'm absolutely willing to take some time and help you be successful, whether you're an apprentice or whether you're another developer on another team. So that collaborative learning environment is super important. Having the willingness or already doing things like pair programming and test-driven development, just kind of best practices in software development, those are also really helpful as far as growing apprentices and being a good place for apprentices.
So how does this differ from a recruiter or staff augmentation?
So I think the main difference is, rather than trying to help people fish in the same pool and compete with one another for scarce resources, being us, being developers, what we're trying to do is make a new pool. we're basically trying to put water into the pool. We're taking people that want to become developers, and we're helping by partnering with you to give them a chance to do that, and basically creating developers that weren't there yet. I think that's the biggest difference. We're not trying to help you find people who are out there already good at it, or already experienced. We're helping you and partnering with you to invest in growing brand new developers. And what we find is these brand new developers, there's a lot of times a greater willingness to do things irrespective of technology or framework, whereas you might have an experienced developer who'd be like, yeah, I only want to do X or Y. One of the cool things about having an apprentice is, I mean, a lot of them, well, really all of them, they're really, really super psyched to have a job programming computers, full stop. And that's pretty awesome.
Last one, so what can companies do, or how do companies know when they're ready to consider an apprenticeship program?
How do companies know when they're ready to consider an apprenticeship program? I would say if you are looking to hire, certainly, at the level of 5 to 10 people next year, and it's probably lower than that. I've had companies that really only wanted to hire a couple developers, and they chose to go the apprenticeship route. So I'm not sure where the low end is. I would say, if you want to hire developers and are, willing to try something that maybe you haven't tried yet, apprenticeship could be a good fit for you. I think there is kind of, you do have to be willing to understand that it is an investment that's a little bit different than like, I got to get something done in 3 weeks or I'm going to go bankrupt. That's probably not the right space. You've got to have an idea that, yes, I'm going to be in software development for months and years. And if you're just trying to crank out a project for a month or two, yeah, that's probably not a good fit for apprenticeship.